Wonderful to see you, Lauren Baker. And so we're going to have a little chat for the Times newsletter of Botanical University Challenge. And if I just sort of set the scene for our viewers and listeners, so you're someone who started studying at University of Nottingham and ended up doing a PhD there. And after that, you spent a bit of time as a teacher and a tutor. And now you're the secondary education officer at Oxford Botanic Garden and Arboretum. And so that's a route into science communication, which is quite unusual in some ways. But the first and most unusual thing about you is that you're interested in plants. How did you get into plants?
Yeah, it was a late interest. I think my love of plants is not unique in the biology field. And what I mean by that is I'm not just interested in plants, and I very much started off being interested in animals. I wanted to be a vet. I find it really interesting looking at the biology curricula still and talking to students today, when I have them in for sessions, how many of them, if they have a natural flair for biology, are being pushed towards a career as either a doctor or a vet, as if that's, you know, the pinnacle of what you can do with a biology knowledge. But yeah, I was interested in doing veterinary, and my A-level year, for various personal reasons, was diabolical, and I didn't get the grades to do any of the veterinary courses. I didn't want to resit a year because mine was the last year that had the cheaper tuition fee. So there was all these different things going on when you're 17 and you're a little bit all over the place. And I ended up going to Nottingham. It was like my backup choice to do applied biology. I kind of just wanted to keep the door very broad. And that course was a good split between animals, plants, and microbes. So it was all of it. And it was my second year, actually, when I was sat in this lecture theatre. And I remember it was this really old lecture theatre. It smelt of books and dust, and there's these old concrete walls with tiny windows that the sunlight used to come through. And I think I was dozing at the back, and this lecturer started talking about the sort of biochemical controls that plants exert over pests and other pathogen diseases. I think it was the jasminates that broke through my brain fog first, about putting off caterpillars. And the way that he was talking about it was so passionate and so interesting, and he brought this kind of whole other world to my attention, that you have these secret little wars and communications between plants and other organisms that are happening all the time that we just don't pay attention to. And then another lecturer the following week started talking about photosynthesis in a way that just, again, it just caught my attention in a completely different way. And I hadn't thought about plants before, but I decided to, swap degrees at that point. So I moved off of the applied biology onto plant sciences, and that was it. It was off into the world of plants.
Wow.
It was an accident. It wasn't something that I'd kind of chosen to do from a young age, because my dad's a tire salesman and my mom's a part-time legal secretary. They, their idea of a green space is a really well manicured lawn. So there wasn't the exposure growing up to the world of plant sciences and botany.
Yeah, it's quite a bold move to change degree program. And now you've moved into science communication, which is something that scientists do to some extent, but doing it as a full-time job is quite a thing. So what started and what sort of journey have you had into that?
So honestly, it was always my favorite part of the job. As you said, being a scientist is a very multidisciplinary job, a career path. You have to be good at your lab skills and good at your people skills and good at writing grants and writing papers. And there's a huge diversity of skills that you need. And my favorite bits of that role were always dealing with people, and doing the sort of public engagement with research and engaging audience members with what you were up to. My job now is technically education, as you say, but without a doubt, science communications are a really important part of that role, whether that be through digital engagement, outreach sessions, on-site school sessions, and all sorts of levels, which is good fun. I like that variation that I do. So I'll have, a year 7 group one day and then a university lecture the next day. And it's nice to flex your brain muscles in terms of how do you explain your concepts at the right level without overcomplicating it with the jargon, so that people don't feel put off and actually listen to what you're trying to say. There's this real barrier with Latin as well, which I experienced when I was younger. Oh, there goes the emails. But it's funny that kids will happily learn things like Tyrannosaurus Rex, but you ask them to learn Artemisia or any other plant name, and they go, "Oh, it's too complicated. Just sunflower's fine," or whatever. Like a bit of cress, that's fine. And so it's interesting to challenge those conceptions and try and get them thinking about things in a different way. And it's incredibly powerful, SciComms as well. I know some fantastic scientists that are doing amazing stuff, but God bless them, they are not good at the comms. And if you can't get your message across to the public about what you're doing and why it's important, I think it then becomes really challenging to bring them on that journey with you, to get government funding or to get that public backing for taking through your research. But I enjoy it. I enjoy people coming to the garden, especially school groups, because you'll always have a few that like could not want to be there less. They have come on a school group because they have had to come, and they are determined not to engage. And sometimes you won't get them, and sometimes you will. And that is just the highlight of the role, really, when they leave and they're like, well, that was actually really fun and really interesting. So, yeah.
So I understand that you're also going to be writing a column in the scientific journal Annals of Botany, which sounds a very ancient journal. It did start in 1887, but it's also very up to date because it's got this spin-off of in silico plants and also the weblog of Botany One. So, and that's, of course, re-engaging back with the scientists, I guess. Again, what's that all about?
Yeah, it is. So my role with Annals of Botany is still very much under development. Rowan and I are working closely to identify how what we're looking at is educational reviews. And the idea is we want to take people from the beginning of a subject towards the advanced research that's come out within one article with various diagrams that explain some of the jargon or the chemical pathways that people need to understand, because some fields move on so quickly, like some of the genetic marker stuff or some of the photosynthetic work. Textbooks can't keep up. And I hear it from academics at Oxford, I hear it from academics at other institutions, that they get either undergrads coming to them, they're trying to teach them, and it's difficult to get them all to the same point and understanding the range of what's available in a field. Or if you're a researcher, there's a growing demand for interdisciplinary research, for people to have a broader understanding, especially in the natural world, with how different processes are interacting with each other to affect questions. So if you're researching rubisco, but you need to have an in-depth understanding of what's going on perhaps with climate change at the moment, then a review of climatic processes and how that could influence, but might really help you get that broader picture for your own research. So we're also envisioning that these reviews could be used by researchers to kind of quickly nerd up in an area that isn't their primary area of expertise. But we're still needling out how we're going to make that different to kind of a classic review article, what subjects we're going to focus in on. We're getting together with the whole board at the International Botanical Congress in Madrid this year. So I think we'll handle out the details there. But the idea is that some of the content will also be suitable for Botany One. And Alan Salt, who runs Botany One, is just brilliant, because that's a really great way to engage the public with some of this science as well. Again, try and remove some of the jargon on the Botany One, or explain the jargon so that people can learn a little bit more about what's going on in the research world.
That sounds really interesting. I'm going to look forward to reading some of it when it finally appears. Yeah, it sounds very worthwhile as well. Yeah, so finally, Lauren Baker, what is your favourite plant?
You know, this was the question I was dreading the most, because I get asked this all the time and it changes so frequently depending on what mood I'm in. But I do always have a soft spot for ferns, which I know is a whole group. It's a very large group, but I can't pick a favourite fern because I just think they're all fabulous, whether it be the maidenhair ferns that everybody pops in their bathrooms or the tree ferns. Ferns for every habitat. They're so glorious, and the patterns that you get when they're producing the sori on the underside of the fronds are just Yeah, I love them. I love the fact they were around before and during that kind of dinosaur era, and that they're still going and that they've got this wonderful spread. The fern that sticks with me the most, actually, just thinking about it, when I was traveling, was the bird's nest fern. I remember seeing some absolutely massive specimens in sort of Singapore and Malaysia up in these giant tropical trees where they should be growing, like up in their epiphytic state. And it was really, really lovely to see them just festooning the branches everywhere up there.
Well, thank you. That's been a really interesting to hear about your botanical life. Thank you very much for talking to Botanical University Challenge.
Thank you.